Tonight, a British Columbia town is at the center of a national tragedy. A mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge has left 9 people dead and more than 24 injured, with victims spanning a secondary school and a nearby residence.
And in a country where mass casualty attacks remain rare, this scale of violence is sending shockwaves far beyond northern BC. So, how does this compare to other mass shootings in Canada? And what does it mean for national conversation on safety, firearms, and community preparedness?
This is Night Talk Canada, episode 70. Well, the tragedy is being described as one of the deadliest mass shootings in Canada in recent years, and the worst shooting in decades. Police say the shooter died of self-inflicted injury. And Prime Minister Mark Carney offered an emotional comment this morning on his way into the House of Commons.
Very difficult day for the nation this morning. Parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers in Tumbler Ridge will wake up without someone they love. The nation mourns with you. Canada stands by you. I want to thank and pass on a number of world leaders who've reached out directly to me in solidarity and compassion. France, United Kingdom, His Majesty himself, Norway, Finland, India, United Arab Emirates, many others. The world is with you. I have spoken to Premier Eby. Minister of Public Safety has been engaged, as have many Canadian officials over the evening. Minister of Public Safety is en route to British Columbia. He and the Premier will be visiting the community. All assistance, obviously, will be offered. We thank the first responders, the teachers, the staff, the residents, for everything that they've done in this terrible situation. I, on the advice of the Clerk of the Privy Council and Heritage Canada, I've asked that the flags in the Peace Tower here and across all government buildings be flown at half-mast for the next 7 days. We will get through this, we will learn from this, but right now it's a time to come together, as Canadians always do in these situations, these terrible situations, to support each other, to mourn together, and to grow together.
You know, Eddie, there was a lot of emotion in that man's comments this morning. A lot of emotion.
He was fighting, he was struggling to hold it back.
He really was. He really, really was. And even I watched when they had the leaders' statements in the House of Commons this afternoon, and basically that's all they did. Again, he was emotional, but not like he was in this first clip this morning. It really, he had no paper in front of him or anything, but it just rolled from the heart. And the other unique thing about it is he was set to be in Halifax today to unveil the defense purchase strategy. Or procurement strategy. I forget what are they calling it, the procurement strategy or the purchase? Anyway, that was supposed to be unveiled today in Halifax, and then he was going to fly from there to Munich for a security conference, and he canceled both things to stay here in Canada, which I thought said quite a bit as well as to how deeply he feels about this and how much he sees it means to all Canadians, and it does mean something to all Canadians. Now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was also coming through this morning, and he did offer a comment. And as well, we have a brief comment from BC Premier David Eby last night, shortly after everything had happened.
Obviously, we are all devastated by the news of this appalling shooting in Tumbler Ridge. The fact that this took place at a secondary school, it makes it even more tragic. As a father, I can't even imagine the phone calls that parents might have received. I can't imagine the heartache and hell that they're living through at this moment. This is a time for all Canadians to unite, to support the families and the community at large. We'll be in touch with the Prime Minister and the other parties later today to offer all of our support to work together and help the community in any way we can in this terrible time. I encourage all Canadians to pray for the community and pray for the family as we go forward and take the necessary steps to support them.
This is a devastating and unimaginable tragedy. We can't imagine what the community is going through.
Now, Premier Eby was on his way earlier today to the community, along with the Public Safety Minister and other ministers and top officials, to offer whatever support they could to the community in the wake of this. Mm-hmm. Late this afternoon, the RCMP held a news conference to update the entire situation, and it was Deputy Commissioner Dwayne MacDonald who was taking part and actually was the spokesperson. And here is a few of the things that he said that updated everything as of late this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Police from Tumbler Ridge RCMP and surrounding detachments responded immediately, with members from the local detachment arriving within 2 minutes of the initial call. Upon arrival, there was active gunfire, and as officers approached the school, rounds were fired in their direction. Officers entered the school to locate the threat. Within minutes, an individual confirmed to be the shooter was located deceased, with what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The suspect has been identified as 18-year-old Jesse Van Rootselaar, who is a resident of Tumbler Ridge. 2 firearms, a long gun and a modified handgun, were recovered by responding officers. The deceased victims from the school include an adult female educator, 3 female students, and 2 male students between the ages of 13 and 17. Two additional victims, an adult female and a male youth, were located deceased in a local residence. So a suspect is identified as an 18-year-old female by the name of Jessie. We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues.
And in response to another question, the Deputy Commissioner also indicated that during one of the calls to the home, at one point, they had removed weapons from the home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question will become, and I'm sure we'll find out throughout the investigation at some point, that, how this individual, after having weapons removed from the home, how she managed to gain access to more weapons. So, and I see I don't have your camera in here. Okay, there we go. There. Sorry about that.
I'm back. Don't worry.
Yeah. Anyway, what I'd like to do right now is just go down through and just run over, if I can find it here, a comparison of some of the shootings that we have had over the years. And let's go back to 2020. That was the Nova Scotia shooting spree that went on, started on a Saturday evening and went into Sunday at about 11 o'clock in the morning. 22 deaths in that one. People shot, people burned in their homes. It was a multi-location. It was all a wide area of I guess you would call it more central Nova Scotia. And it was the deadliest mass shooting in Canadian history, and it led to major gun bans. And for comparison, it had a higher death toll than Tumbler Ridge, broader geography, but a similar national shockwave. I remember that Sunday morning waking up, picking up my phone, and because I was monitoring a number of provinces while I was working, I had the text. They used X, Twitter, for a time being to get emergency messages out. And coming out of that whole investigation into the handling of that shooting, they moved to a much more sophisticated emergency messaging system, as did yesterday. The RCMP Deputy Commissioner said today, he said, as our units were responding to the school, we had sent out a note on the emergency messaging system. And as they were arriving at the school, that note had gone out to everyone, which was an extremely quick response, because I know initially when these emergency management messages were being brought in, that in at least a couple of the provinces, you had to go through a chain of command before you got approval. And that chain of command just slowed down getting the message out. By the time some of these messages got out, they really were old, and they were they weren't valid at all.
Well, that's
so anyway,
the thing.
that has improved significantly. Pardon?
Yeah, well, like you said, I mean, it's improved significantly. And you know what? You don't want to have to learn from tragedy, but the fact that we are learning from tragedy to respond better, like you said, happened in British Columbia, react more quickly, and maybe even preventative measures being put into place. I like you're saying, it's good to hear that they've improved, although from tragic circumstances, which you never want to see, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay, so then in 2017, of course, we have the Quebec City mosque shooting, which resulted in 6 deaths. And of course, it was ideologically motivated attack and lower casualty count, but major hate crime implications as well. Following that, in 2014, we had the Moncton RCMP shootings, which resulted in the deaths of 3 officers. It was a targeted attack on police. In comparison, well, much smaller in scale, but nationally significant due to law enforcement targeting. And as a matter of fact, the whole city of Moncton was sealed off, and they were living in terror and sheltering in place in terror, because this guy started out walking through a subdivision where kids were playing on front lawns and everything, and the calls started coming in when they saw him walking through the neighborhood with the guns. I mean, he was decked out as far as weapons were concerned. And of course, one of the first responding police officers arrives on the scene and didn't have a chance. And this guy had the high-powered rifles, and at that point, the RCMP still had not. I think they had some of the new high-powered weapons that they were gearing up with, but no one in Moncton had them.
Mm-hmm.
So they were outgunned as soon as they arrived on the scene, and that went on for almost a 24-hour period. And I remember at the time you could still hear the scanner and listening to the RCMP units responding from all over New Brunswick heading to Moncton. And then police units from St. John and Fredericton and the Kennebecasis Valley all responded and were part of the major net that they threw out trying to catch this guy, which they eventually did. But it was that was a pretty scary moment as well for a city, really.
Yeah.
And in 1989, of course, the Montreal Polytechnic, 14 deaths, a targeted school shooting, the significance, pivotal event shaping modern Canadian gun control. In comparison, still deadlier, but Tumbler Ridge is being called the worst school shooting in decades. And you're looking at a polytechnic and a secondary school in a small town of 2,400, and there were, I think, about 175 students in total.
Yeah. Everyone is affected by this thing. Absolutely everyone.
Yeah. Well, as one specialist was pointing out today, as far as the mental impact, remember, in a small town like that, people, you're responding, and all of a sudden you're wondering, is it my child? Because you could have children in the school. Is it somebody I know? Is it a close friend? All of these things. And they walk. And when they first arrived, the first two units that arrived on the scene, and they arrived within 2 minutes, the town RCMP detachment arrived within 2 minutes. And they took fire. This shooter was taking aim at them. They didn't return the fire, and by the time they get into the school and started to secure it, that's when they found the shooter's body.
Yeah.
So, and of course, then they had backup arriving from some of the other smaller detachments, but you're talking like detachments that might be 2 people tops, maybe 3 or 4, and that's it. So the impact that's going to have on the first responders, not only the RCMP, but your medical personnel, your fire department personnel, it's just going to be really, really, really significant. Yeah. And I've been trying to think of something to say about this, and I'm not even sure what it is that you can say. There's just, obviously, there were some mental health issues, and they're in a small, remote part of the province. They're like, I think it's about 600 miles northeast of Vancouver, and it's very near the BC-Alberta border. But a very, small community. And
I mean, you looked at all the individuals that you showed leadership roles in Canada, the Prime Minister, Mr. Poilievre, and the Premier of British Columbia. I mean, they were visibly shaken in their statements, and all 3 of them reached out. I mean, you can actually hear them speaking to you, and they actually reached out with the raw emotion of that was contained within their statements. And you looked at the numbers you just presented to us, and we've heard about you heard the person in charge of the police force out there, attributing this to some mental health issues. Gary, as a society, you'd like to see it as zero. You can do everything possible to prevent these types of tragedies from happening. It's just the nature of things is that things will happen, and all we can do is try to minimize from it. And as I mentioned earlier on, following up on your comment, is learn from it. How do we continue to prevent these things from happening? Canada improving its gun laws, Canada improving its funding for mental health, making sure we get these mental health services available to the remoter regions of our country, such as such as where tragedy happened today, is going to continue to be paramount. And seeing this tragedy unfold this morning, when I took a look at the news, I mean, immediately my mind went back to what happened out in Eastern Canada in 2020, out in Nova Scotia. My mind immediately raced through what happened in Montreal at the Polytechnique Massacre, Université de Montréal. My mind even went back to the shootings that went on in our junior college, our CEGEP, Dawson College. At that particular point in time, my son was attending there.
Wow.
So obviously, as a parent, I immediately started panicking, and everything was okay with my son, and he wasn't there at the time. He didn't have classes, but immediately your mind starts to race, and those were my immediate flashbacks, and then you kind of say to yourself, yeah, these tragedies do happen in our country, which goes on to the next questions, right? Well, how bad is it getting here? Is it more frequent than it used to be? Is it not? In a pretty relatively safe country when it comes to these types of things. When I think about my neighbors to the south, I mean, this barely makes the news anymore. There are just so many mass shootings in the United States and some other horrible parts of the world. So, just my opinion is we just continue working hard and trying to prevent this by whatever means possible. And then it will happen again, Gary, unfortunately, and we continue to learn from it. But then breathing a sigh of relief, we're still relatively safe in terms of these types of travesties and tragedies happening exponentially on an exponentially higher basis than as we see down south in the States. So it's horrible to see and hear, and I'm feeling pain for this because of the fact I'm just going back to flashback into the other mass shootings we've had in the country, and to my experience with my own son being at the junior college that got shot up some time ago.
It is the feeling that runs through you as a parent. It's amazing. I remember the Colorado school shooting. That was one of the first, if not the first, mass shootings at a school in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I had a daughter living in the U.S., but on the East Coast. But still, she was far away, and you just wanted to reach out to your children at that moment and just hug them.
Yeah.
It was. I remember how I felt, and it wasn't like there were a lot of emotion running through me at the time. And then again, the Polytechnique shooting, the one in Nova Scotia, Quebec City, they've all caused me to just stop and just pause and reflect. And it doesn't get any easier, And when you're covering it, or you're working in the news and information business, it's constant. While you're at work, just constant. But you have to keep going. You just have to keep going. So now the other side of this is, Eddie, Nova Scotia, yes, Nova Scotia's shooting in 2020 was in a rural area. And again, this one has taken place in a very, very rural, I won't say isolated, but very, very rural area, so that it's not just happening in the big cities anymore. As you said, it's a town of roughly 2,400 people. They're a tight-knit community, and they're used to, as one commentator I heard today say, they're used to the ups and downs and dealing with all of those sorts of things, from working in resource-based industries with the mining side of it. But, and violent crime is rare. But then you get the psychological shock factor that's involved here, and it's enormous because, these places view themselves as insulated from the mass casualty violence, and they're not. They're just not.
Yeah.
Then you get into the investigative side of it, the first responders, but you have a multi-site crime scene now, the school and the nearby home.
Yeah.
And looking at the timeline now, the RCMP did say today that the suspect, as they still refer to her as, was armed with a long gun, a rifle, and he did say a modified handgun, but didn't really get into any further detail as to what he meant by a modified handgun. So, we've been focusing on the assault-style weapons in this country and trying to get those off the streets.
Correct.
But here we have just a rifle and whatever the modified handgun was being used in a crime of this magnitude. So yeah, it's as it is with the Carney government's gun buyback program right now. That this is going to really push that debate up big time, and away we go again. And then the whole issue around mental health intervention and the availability of mental health resources to help with these sorts of things. You have that as well, and then you look at the rural policing resources too. These are all issues that will be discussed openly over the next couple of weeks, and as they should be. So
Yeah.
just
You mentioned. Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
I was just going to say, just had a couple of comments. I lost your audio. Is anyone else experiencing this? And then they just came back and said it's back. Okay. Deborah was saying that she lost it, but it's back.
I got a thumbs up here. I got a thumbs up here as well.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, I was
so you were going to say.
You were talking about the gun buyback program, and my mind immediately went to our government's efforts to ban assault weapons, right? Or to push to continue doing so and getting more tough on that. So two thoughts come to me is A, because of this program, was this particular individual restricted or somehow was not able to get their hands on an assault rifle, making this particular tragedy potentially far worse than it is? And what else is going to be done as a result of this in terms of further pushing for a reduction of the amount of weapons that are out there? And look, I've got friends that are hunters, and they all have rifles and shotguns for hunting. I don't have an issue with that, but the unfortunate part is they do fall in the hands of the wrong people, especially those that might be struggling with mental health issues, right? So, what's the fine point here? What's the line of balance here? But personally, in my opinion, I would like to think that the government's push for minimizing the amount of assault weapons that are available to people and making it difficult potentially could have saved a lot more people today. Can you imagine this person got their guns on a bump stock modified gun or an actual assault rifle? The damage that would have happened in that small environment in a school. So I'd like to think that a continued push to minimize that will further prevent all of these tragedies from happening, Gary.
Well, it is going to ignite the debate even more so, no question. Because we have the existing bans on the assault-style firearms. There are tighter handgun rules, but events like this, renew the calls for further controls, enforcement of proper storage and threat reporting systems. But it comes to a point: how far can you go with that?
Yeah.
And we have another problem. As much as the occupant of the Oval Office has been complaining, although recently not so much, about fentanyl coming through our border, on the other side, the number of illegal guns that have been coming through to Canada from the U.S., the last stat I saw had increased over previous years.
It's actually quite staggering, Barry.
Yeah. So we have guns coming in to a country where our gun control is getting tighter, but obviously it certainly ain't foolproof by any stretch of the imagination. And people who are criminals for sure will get their hands on guns, on weapons of, on any one of a number of styles of weapons very easily. Others, such as somebody who's struggling with mental health issues and so on, they'll find a way somehow. They will. So, I mean, I don't have the answers, and I don't think anyone else has all of the answers either.
No, and every country's got their own programs. I mean, you know what? I really wish. I mean, I know we had that recent the father and son shooting episode in Australia not too long ago, both with long guns and long rifle type of thing, right? Type of weapon. And again, you know that government there learns from their previous mistakes, and they're going to continue to do so. But the difference between Australia and here in Canada is they learn very quickly. I mean, within 24 hours, the government was already sitting down in further tightening a bipartisan discussion and immediate action, getting plans together to further tighten gun control in Australia. Not a month, not a year, not a mandate, prime ministerial mandate, 24 hours ago.
Wow.
And I, for one, am envious of that our politicians here, either through a lack of will to do so, with potentially alienating a large population of voters, or they're just not brave enough to move forward and risk political career to push something through like tougher gun controls that Australia has. Their weaponry is not completely banned, but they're extremely tough and vigilant with it, where there are significant penalties associated with possessing illegal weapons in Australia, and jail terms, as opposed to what we potentially might see here as a slap on the wrist and a get out of jail card. So I'm really happy with the way they deal with it, and I hope that at some point our politicians and our governments will be as expeditious as the Australians are. You know, that will be a great exercise in terms of learning quickly. Another excellent way of preventing these things from or minimizing these things from happening.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, we do have a comment here. Let's see. Trying to get mental health care in this country is virtually impossible. If we would just see people and care about what they are going through and report dangerous actions, we could prevent this. And that's from Deborah. Mm-hmm. Deborah, thank you for your comment. There's no question, and when we've had Greg Zed on, and he's been talking about some of the mental health issues in relation to whatever the topic was that we were discussing at the time. Mm-hmm. He'll be the first to tell you, having worked in the mental health field for years, that more needs to be done. What I glean from different things that he has said, and then when you see the failings of the system as we have witnessed yesterday, we have a long, long way to go. And knowing some people who have had mental health issues to deal with as well, and trying to get, work through the system, such as it is, because there's, it's vastly understaffed, under-resourced from a financial standpoint, and they're overwhelmed. The system is overwhelmed. So, this is just another part of our healthcare issue that we really have to sit down and try and figure out what the hell we're going to do, because our healthcare system is on life support.
Yeah.
And that life support, like the heartbeat of it is getting weaker day by day by day. And yet we're spending more and more money. And what are we getting for it? Nothing.
Yeah.
So, my heart goes out to the people of Tumbler Ridge
Ditto. Same here.
and to the parents who are in a position that the rest of us hope and pray that we're never in, and and the first responders and so on.
Good on them. I mean, they got there quick.
Yeah. So, have we accomplished anything tonight? Probably not. But if we even had one person who caught us live, or who may catch the segment later on when it's posted, and cause them to stop and to pause and think about this and say, okay, maybe I'm going to ask my MP and my MLA or MNA what's going on and why can't we make this better? Then you know what? Good. We get the conversation started. It's like we say, it's the conversation we should be having.
Absolutely, and I guess further to your point on what else can we possibly do with our show, basically go for it. Like, just take Deborah's comment for example. If we or our viewers actually see someone, whether it's somebody personally under some sort of duress where you suspect that they may do harm to themselves, or worst case scenario with harm to others. Not to be shy about intruding on somebody's privacy and getting the necessary help, either the direct help, or even if you have to call the authorities for anything suspicious. I think at this point in time, with the way social media works and the access to horrific information that an individual can get their hands on, it's not something we can just say, oh, it's just one of those things, because you know what, Gary? Nobody expects your next door neighbor to go on a shooting rampage, right? So that's basically just getting a little too complacent. If you see somebody that's struggling with something that's just completely out of the ordinary, I guess it behooves us to be a good Samaritan and actually try to help this individual or notify the local authorities and let them deal with it. If nothing comes of it, you know what? Nothing comes of it. Maybe you lost a friend or whatever the case is, but you could have potentially saved people's lives without even knowing it. So if there's a message I could convey to support what you said, Gary, would be that.
And even if you don't know anyone at the moment who is going through a mental health issue, or ask, take the time to look into what your province, what your health department is doing, and ask questions of your member of the legislature and your member of parliament. The more that we get this out in front, the more likely we are to get some positive action on it. And we're going to be dealing, as I said, with a renewed debate over gun control, for sure, even more so now. let's get a debate going on the provision or lack thereof of mental health services across the country.
Well said, Gary. Well said.
Okay, Eddie,
Okay.
I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, moving on, Gary. Our next segment, a new electronic petition on the House of Commons website is actually gaining attention, Gary. It's calling for all federal party leaders to obtain high-level security clearance. It was launched by a resident of Manotick, Ontario, and authorized by Liberal MP Bruce Fanjoy in the Carleton riding, once held by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. The bigger question isn't the petition itself. It's what it says about trust, transparency, and political risk in Canada today, Gary.
Yeah, I tried to track down the individual who originally filed the petition because the House of Commons does not put that kind of information. They put the name, but they don't put an address or contact information on the website. And I couldn't, even using Facebook, I couldn't really sort through it. So I did reach out to the MP Fanjoy, and I still am awaiting a
Gary, we
response.
can't see you.
Oh, sorry. I did reach
There
out
we go.
to. I got everything else right. I did reach out to MP Fanjoy, and I'm still waiting for a response to my email. So, anyhow, what I would like to do though is just flip over to the website so that you can see it. And here we go. So here is the signature, or the petition, I should say. It's electronic, and I'll just bring it up in full right now. Do this, refresh it. There we go. All right. So if you go into the House of Commons website, you'll find an area where they have it set up for petitions, electronic petitions. And this is E7148, and it is a petition to the House of Commons. And I'm going to try, I should have printed off a copy, silly me. Anyway, it does say, Canada faces increasing national security risks in a complex and shifting geopolitical landscape, and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service warns that political parties, elected officials, and candidates are potential targets for foreign interference. And it goes on from there. And what it is aimed at is to make it mandatory for all party leaders, federal party leaders, to be cleared at a certain high level, security-wise. Now, Prime Minister is Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has, to this point, refused to be a part of it. And I've got you out of there too, Eddie. Jeez.
You don't like me very much tonight.
There we go.
There we go.
Anyway, he has refused, and his line of reasoning has been, if I submit to that and I'm briefed on something, I won't be able to ask questions about it in public. Well, yeah. If you're briefed at a high level of security, you shouldn't be asking questions about it in public at that particular point. I'm not sure if...
I don't get that statement either. I try to listen to him and kind of read between the lines of what he's trying to say, but it just doesn't make sense, Gary.
Well, I know. And
I don't know what to say.
And it's not uncommon in certain situations for the Prime Minister to speak to the leaders of the various parties. But if you have one who's not security level cleared at all, it's pretty hard for you, and it happens to be the leader of the opposition. It's pretty hard for you to do that. Although you might have a certain level of security clearance, and the Prime Minister has higher, and he may mention something from that higher level, but you're still at your security level. You're still not supposed to say anything outside of the four walls. So in this particular case, I am not going after the leader of the opposition. That's his choice. That's the choice he has made. What the petition is saying is that they get enough signatures. It shows a large number of Canadians, majority of Canadians, want their party leaders to have this security level of clearance. And even, if something comes up, as the petition states, about if there's, CSIS has an indication of foreign interference with your party or foreign interference with some of your party members, they can brief you on that and bring you into the fold to discuss how to remedy the situation.
Yeah. Well, doesn't it add a certain level of complexity to Pierre Poilievre's thinking? What if he was the Prime Minister of Canada, and you have CSIS and all these intelligence agencies that are out doing their work? I mean, they have an utmost commitment to secrecy when it comes to defending Canada. What are they going to say? I know he's the Prime Minister of Canada, but he hasn't been cleared security-wise. How do we know he's not in cahoots with somebody else across the world, across the ocean? And should we be giving him any information? So I'm just speaking very out of the box here, but Gary, that for me as a Canadian citizen, look, that it's his choice what he wants to do, absolutely, right? And I'm always on, in this particular case, Pierre Poilievre, but the opposition parties. I want the opposition parties to be strong and hold the government accountable. In this particular case, it happens to be Pierre Poilievre, right? How can he do his job properly if A, he doesn't have the security clearance, B, the Prime Minister of Canada at this particular point in time may have been providing updates to opposition party leaders in terms of what is going on in Canada that's supposed to happen between the four walls and closed doors. And he may not be telling Pierre Poilievre because he doesn't have the security clearance. So A, Poilievre won't know what he's not being told. And B, how can he effectively govern after or lead the opposition party after something comes out that, okay, now we're going to be coming out and making this public, which happens quite often. At the beginning, it's a secret. Later on, it does come out for discussion and letting the public know what's been going on. What is he going to do? Well, they didn't tell me, and make a big issue out of it. Well, you don't have your security clearance. So that's the first thought that comes to my mind. You're absolutely right. It's his choice. But as we mentioned very often, there are consequences that come along with individual choices. And this just happens to be one. You've got a high-profile position in this government. You and I are paying his salary, Gary. And I think from an expectation perspective, myself personally, I would like the leaders of our country to have security clearance. Okay, in layman's terms, for example, Gary, I've worked in the aeronautic industry and managed airports. Okay, I had to get security clearance. My frontline technicians had to get security clearance. Okay, my manager of my command center had to get security clearance, even though he never set foot in an airport. My jobs after that, I had to get security clearance. I had nothing to do with the government. It was a Canadian company. Other positions, people that I've been hiring, they'll go through security. They'll go through a background check, and all background checks usually have a security component in it. So if regular citizens need to go through this process as part of the hiring process, why on God's green earth do we not expect that from the people who are leaders within our governments? Whether, let's go from municipal, go provincial, why not? But federal, there should be absolutely zero question. You want to hold a seat in the House of Commons, you have to have a security clearance check. That's my opinion as a citizen. I'm just seeing it as something that's hampering our government in terms of Pierre Poilievre choosing not to do so. He can do whatever he wants, but at the same time, I'm paying part of your salary, and I would like for you to explain why you can't get it in real terms. None of this cloak and dagger clouded reason why you decide personally you don't have to go for this. It should not be a question. I think it's something you need to do to get my trust. And I'm just one of hundreds of thousands of people that I'm sure share the same opinion.
And that does bring up a good point, Eddie, as to the the trust factor. And we have I don't know. Monel says, "What is PP hiding? Maybe he can't get a clearance." And it could be that too. Who knows? But anyhow, and then Deborah says, I had to have protected B security clearance to be able to file and work on plans and specifications for RCMP detachments. So why are government officials allowed to go without? And that, I mean, I used to have to get security clearances all the time, like covering the Prime Minister when he came to town. The Point Lepreau nuclear generating station, whenever you went near there. There was just royal visits, just a host of different things that I had to have a certain level of security clearance. And then my father, when we were growing up, my father working at Base Gagetown, Department of National Defense, and he had a high-level NATO security clearance. Even what we were doing in school as kids, like that all factored into the overall review that they would do as part of the security clearance. It's just, it's a given, in my estimation now, for a number of things, and especially if you have Canadian companies that are working abroad, and with everything that's going on now with the foreign interference in elections and the process, the bots, working, Russian bots and Chinese bots working on social media platforms, trying to wear down the population. It's all there. And man, like, to me, as an elected official, and I say right from your municipal level right on through, there should be a certain level of security clearance along the way, because even at the municipal level, you could end up on a municipal committee or planning committee or whatever, and you're dealing with the Defense Department for a new secret bunker or something. Or
you're dealing with a local mob who might be in cahoots with some dealer someplace. You don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, right? You just don't know. So to me, it's not only at the federal level. I think that at all levels of elected government, there should be, if there's not in place already, there should be some kind of a stepping, stone kind of security levels for clearance all the way through. And as you get higher in the organization, then you may have to step up your security level. And it was amazing. Deborah mentioned about her security clearance. The amount of information she had to submit on family and friends and all of that kind of stuff, and then go through a 3 or 4 hour interview at RCMP headquarters. Like it was no piece of cake. That's for sure.
That actually reminds me, my brother-in-law, I won't say which law enforcement agency he works in, but when he applied for the job, I actually spent about 45 minutes on the call with this particular agency as an exercise to vet his security clearance. And he's not a police officer by any means, but I had to support him with a 45-minute discussion with somebody on the other end asking me specifically about my brother-in-law. So he's not a law enforcement officer or an agent of any sort, but in support of someone applying for a job that has implications where there's security information floating around. He may never see himself. He still had to be cleared, and they went down to family members. So why are we basically giving a pass to any of our politicians or anybody in power, like you said, municipal, provincial, or in federal? Anybody sitting in that house, either on the floor up at the Senate, they should all be cleared. In my view, Gary, there shouldn't be any exceptions.
Absolutely, and even with, I'm glad you mentioned the Senate because it's an unelected body, so they're appointed. By all means, they should be vetted.
Well, here's an interesting thing too, though. And this is an open-ended question for you. Do you think that when Carney and his ministers and his cabinet deal with their counterparts in other countries, do you think there's a certain level of expectation by the Canadian government that the elected officials in said country that our ministers are dealing with also have passed security clearance, and vice versa? When our Canadian delegates visit other countries, France, for example, do they have an expectation that the people they're dealing with are cleared? They got security clearance? Because security clearance isn't just about internal affairs of Canada. This also extends to everybody around the world, the Russias, the Chinas, and whatever else. Do you think France wants to talk to somebody in Canada that has not been cleared from a security perspective with the suspicions that there might be some ongoing discussions with other foreign countries? It just dawned on me just now. What are the expectations, one way or the other?
I would think that when they're getting right down into the weeds of a high-level discussion, that they would expect those people to have a certain level of security clearance. And I would think that would be all, prearranged long before wheels up in Canada heading for France and the meeting. We're all members of NATO. There's a certain level of security required as far as NATO is concerned, and it just goes on. It goes, snowballs from there. So I would think they do. I would hope they do, for sure.
Well, my point exactly. Can you imagine if Pierre Poilievre was the Prime Minister of Canada and he went on his first foreign mission? I think Carney's first one was to the UK, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. And they basically said, no, we can't have discussions with you. You haven't been cleared security-wise. What kind of a national embarrassment would that be? I mean, it's a possibility. Macron basically said, hey, I'm not talking to you. You haven't got security clearance. Yep, yes, you are. Your country is part of NATO, but you haven't got security clearance. I mean, that would be an absolute embarrassment to the country. And I would encourage the Pierre Poilievre, since he watches our show on a regular basis, to take our comments to heed. I mean, it's very important, sir. You got to do what you need to do for the sake of the country. Otherwise, I'm just going to think about myself, along with a lot of Canadians, are going to think this entire exercise of not getting your security clearance suspicious. Let's put it that way.
I'll come back to 3 questions that we'll leave on the table for folks to think about and maybe comment on, because we do have some breaking news here, I believe. Yeah, off-topic breaking news. Manel says the U.S. Congress voted yes to remove the 25% tariffs on Canada.
Holy poop.
Yeah. How's this one going to go down? Can't wait for.
Yeah. Does El Presidente have to sign off on it, or can he just push this through?
Or just ignore it, as he does a lot of other things.
Or just ignore it. Yeah, exactly. You know what? Just because of that, he's going to put another 15% on us.
So it remains to be seen. I mean, he's got his Stanfield's in a knot anyway over the Gordie Howe Bridge. So.
That's you know what, Gary? That's another show for sure. I've only had
Well, especially when you consider that he was all for it back in his first term.
Yeah.
Remember?
Mhm.
And as he was with the Kuzma deal or the USMCA, depending which side of the border you're on, and that's all gone out the window.
He had a
And
4 a.m. bowel movement, Gary.
he's still smarting over the Doug Ford saying he's not putting any more liquid or liquor, U.S. liquor on the shelves, and smarting over the ads that Ontario ran, I think. So, okay, now we do have another comment which goes a little off topic, but the name was brought up, so let's go have a gander here. So Free West says Pierre will be the first president of Western Canada. The fool in Mexico explains why. Or yeah, that is fool. Yeah, the fool in Mexico explains why. The first president of Western Canada. So maybe that's why he might be holding out on his Canadian security clearance.
Mm-hmm.
He'll need one for Alberta, maybe.
Now, when the fool in Mexico, surely he's not the person's not referring to me. He's referring to President Scheinbaum.
I think it was a
I
shot
did-
at you, Eddie.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
There have been a
Thank you,
few
Wayne.
my way. Oh, my favorite comment from last week was where I was compared to the guy on Family Guy. I told you about that
Yeah.
one. I just can't
Yeah,
remember what the guy's name was.
Yeah, that was my mistake. Thank you, Free West. I appreciate that comment. Thanks for watching.
All right, so I'm going to leave these three questions here to wrap up this part of the conversation. And that is, should party leaders be required to access classified intelligence? In some cases, I would say in a number of cases, yes. Is refusal a transparency issue or a political shield? That's the $64 question right there.
Mm-hmm.
And could this set a precedent for candidate vetting nationally? I think that if you're going to offer for office, and again, it goes through the three levels of government: municipal, provincial, federal. I think you should be vetted. That should be part of the process in putting your name forward, that you be vetted so that everyone knows what they're dealing with and what they're getting or not getting. But I think that should actually be, especially now, that should actually be one of the official requirements is you must be vetted at, and it does not necessarily have to be a high level of security, but you must be vetted through some kind of a security clearance.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. So, okay, and with that, Eddie, I think we'll put a cap on that. Maybe what I'll do is after we wrap up, I'll put those three questions up on the YouTube site and on Facebook and see if we get any responses to them. What do you think?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. All right. So before we move on, to something that's going to drive me crazy because it has been over the last 2 days while I've been editing video, and that's the Olympic protests gone wild.
Mm-hmm.
First, though, just wanted to let you know this. My go-to Montreal-based web hosting service, WHC, is offering a great special between now and the 23rd of this month on new activations. You can receive up to 79% off all web hosting plans on new activations. Up to 79% off all web hosting plans. That's a really good deal. So you can get the details on the offer by clicking the affiliate link below in the description.
Yes, Gary. And just a follow up to our conversation last week, our show last week, the Winter Olympics are in full swing. Well, Gary, the Olympics in Milan were meant to showcase sport at its highest level. We talked about that quite a bit last week. But instead, they're facing a growing wave of political protests from activists, advocacy groups, and geopolitical demonstrators.
And it's raising an old question that never seems to go away. Can the Olympics ever truly stay apolitical? Anyhow, and I just realized what I did. So, it was the look on your face.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to get into this a bit. Like, I have found over the years that the Olympics, unfortunately, the politics involved and the crap that's involved in trying to get the venues completed on time and all of that, and now more than ever, the increasing cost of security for the games, to me, it has just taken away from what the athletes are accomplishing. It's almost like, and that they've become sort of second fiddle versus everything else. And of course, in Europe, they don't mess around when they start demonstrations. And they've had demonstrations, and there's just a gaggle of various groups associated with these protests. You know, the environmentalists, and there are people walking around with cardboard trees. They're upset over the number of trees that were cut down for some of the runs for the skiing and the sledding and everything, and then for some of the other venues, the environmental disruption that went on. And then you've got people protesting about the amount of money spent on these games versus where the money could be better spent to help people. And then you have the people who are really upset because ICE is there as part of the security team.
Right.
And you know what? I kind of get where they're coming from there. Why ICE? Why not send some National Guard over? Some of the National Guard over. But ICE, that'd be the last thing anybody with a little lick of sense would do.
Even a private security firm. I mean, why send ICE out there unless you wanted to stir up some sorry about the expression, stir up shit? I mean, why send them there to create controversy? Anyway, that's just my thinking on that matter.
Well, no, exactly. So I did go through, and I did manage to grab some clips. And wait till you see this. Like, I won't say anymore. Just watch
let's have a look.
and be prepared for a lot of noise. Okay, that was one, and here's the other one. Oh. We're not getting any audio, but it's the same banging and crackling. And actually, you're lucky you're not getting it. But this is the police finally. They've had enough, and they're moving in.
Yeah, you're right. The Europeans don't fool around with their protests.
Nope. There were hundreds of people in that protest. And here they go. And the police, they were outnumbered, but they had the big water cannon truck as well. But they moved in and moved them back down the street. But look at the smoke and everything. And this was near, from what I understand, this was near the Olympic Village.
Hmm.
And okay, we all have a right to protest. But what I was watching there, and as I say, I watched a lot of video of that particular, that was Saturday night
Right.
from different angles. And like, I don't know if you caught it, but in the first clip, there was a guy holding kind of like this box kind of thing, and he had trigger on each side, and he was just pushing, and that's what was firing out those fireworks, and they were just all over the place, and they were throwing smoke bombs, and some of the explosions on the smoke bombs, and I think the police throwing back some flash bombs as well, right? It was like watching a war movie.
Right.
Meantime, I'm sitting there thinking, and what was happening at the Olympics on Saturday? I don't know, because I was sidewinded, by this.
Right.
That, to me, again, goes back to some of the pro-Palestinian rallies that we had here in Montreal and elsewhere in Canada.
Right.
Very, 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 this is very well organized and obviously very well funded.
Funded, for sure.
Very well funded.
Well, you know what? Somebody, I mean, whoever organized this, I mean, they're not stupid. They know that the entire world is watching the Olympics. At least, the majority of the northern hemisphere watching the Winter Olympics, and we've got the smattering of the southern hemisphere as well. A lot of Aussies and some of these smaller nations watching. Where would you want your views and your feelings to be demonstrated and get the biggest bang for the buck when it comes to people watching the Olympics or any other major event? And it's like I mentioned last week, the spirit of the Olympics. If we can all just focus on what it actually means and what Pierre de Coubertin wanted the Olympics to accomplish, the world would be such a better place. No question about it. However, there are so many issues in the world right now that are of significant importance that continue to try to offset major events like the Olympics, good-spirited events like the Olympics. And you know what? Protests are really nothing new to the Olympics, Gary. My memory fails me right now, but as I know that at every Olympic there was some sort of a demonstration. I remember in the Sochi Olympics, there were demonstrations specific to the LGBTQ crackdown. A lot of dissidents there and a lot of protests by tourists actually there during the games because they know they're not going to get arrested by Russian militia. So they protested. So every Olympics has got its own set of issues to contend with from a protest perspective. But absolutely, Gary, the budget that goes into providing the necessary security for the Olympics is astronomical. It must take up anywhere between 30% of the entire budget of the operation during the event, which is really significant. It's a necessary evil, but that's just the way of the world today, So I'm not surprised by the protests. I usually take a look and see, well, what exactly are you trying to protest, and am I getting your message? The violence and the property damage. You know what? I don't get your message. I don't support anything you're trying to accomplish. I already know what you're trying to protest, and hopefully we as individuals will do as much as we can to try to support the good things in this world. You know what? I don't like the trees being cut down either. I understand the conservationists and their distaste for what was actually happening, but resorting to violence, I'm never behind these people when they do that.
No, Eddie, here are three questions. Like, should protests be allowed at Olympic venues? No. Are the games an unavoidable political stage? Yes, if handled properly. And how should organizers balance security versus free expression? You don't worry about
Right.
free expression. They're on the other side of the fence. You have to have a certain, here we go, level of security. You've been vetted. If you're buying tickets, you have to be vetted. And only those with the official tickets and security passes will be allowed beyond the gates. Anyone else, you're on the outside.
Mhm.
I sit here sometimes and ask myself, why are we having discussions about things that are so basic, so common sense? It doesn't take an expert to figure this out. No, protests should not be allowed at the Olympic venues. They're there, it's a sporting competition.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, that kind of begs a question then. They had to have known this was coming. I mean, if they've got any level of intelligence and counterintelligence, they should have been better prepared for this particular protest before it actually happened, you would think. So there was a failure somewhere in security, or they just basically ignored it and thought, well, we'll just deal with it. It happened. It happened, which is it's a stain on Italy's producing the Olympic Games. I mean, all the investments aside from it, the Olympics are happening regardless of what the protesters would like to see, would not like to see. And there's a time. I mean, the entire purpose of the Olympics, even in the ancient days, wars were actually stopped. Wars were actually stopped in ancient Greece, so people can participate in peace. And sometimes opposing soldiers were competing. This is the whole thing, and it's just unfortunate in today's world that the population, the citizens of the world, can't put their differences aside and actually allow the athletes to compete. And we talk always about for this particular show, a particular element is, can politics stay out of the Olympics? I think with every subsequent Olympics, the politics associated with it and the political issues around the world are going to take center stage more and more often than either of us would like to see, Gary, to tell you the truth. I mean, look, Russia's invasions of the Ukraine. The Russians haven't participated in the Olympics since the Sochi Olympics in 2014 when they first invaded Crimea. So, okay, that's, let's use that as a benchmark, right? Well, where does it stop from there? I mean, there are many countries committing atrocities today. Are all those countries barred from international competition? No. And you kind of say to yourself, well, why no? Is it politics? Is it money? Is it trade relations? What gives? So you either ban everybody that shouldn't be there, and it's going to be a mini Olympics. And I don't think too many countries would be participating because there's things that are not right in every country in the world. Or like where do you draw the line? The Russians are not there. And if you looked at the opening ceremonies, as fans of the Olympics, I mean, even to a large degree, if you looked at the opening, if you listened to watch the opening ceremonies, I mean, the athletes are there to compete. They're there with any kind of political affiliation, zero. They're there to compete. They train their butts off for 4 years, right? Politics doesn't play into the equation, I don't think. And you have these 6 Israeli athletes walking into the stadium in Italy, and they were booed. I mean, it was clearly audible, and my heart went out to those athletes. I go, oh my goodness, I just felt for the athletes. Then by the same token, you kind of listen to people in Italy and Europe who are aware of what's going on in the world, deciding to voice their protest by boos and jeering, whistles. In Europe, a lot of people whistle instead of boo. They whistle. They voice their displeasure, knowing full well that the rest of the world is watching, and they want people to know that Italy is aware of what's going on. And not fair to the athletes, but it's just Europe protesting what's been going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And then, as the evening progressed, I didn't really hear anything from any other country except in comes the United States of America. And you know what? I didn't hear all that much booing or whistling. Just a lot of cheering, okay? Until the shot pans to Vance and his wife. And I mean, it was clear. They booed and whistled and jeered him incessantly, like really heavily. And of course, I was watching the CBC feed, so we got it as it happened. And I actually watched clips of the NBC feed after the fact, and like kind of like show it for 3 or 4 seconds. And where the hell is cheering coming from? And then after doing some further research, they actually put applause in to dull out the booing. But the point I'm trying to make, Gary, is athletes should be cheered. At that particular point in time, I know you and I are never going to be convincing a major population like the Italian sports fan not to boo, or Canadian sports fans for that fact, when the national anthem of the States is being played in hockey arenas. You know what? It's athletes, especially the Olympics. There are athletes that participate once every 4 years. They're not everyday professionals making millions and millions and millions of dollars every week. Honor and respect the athletes at the Olympics. That's what I always say. There's no point booing them there. It's not going to do anything except make the social media feeds, and the memes will come out and whatnot, But I just felt bad for the athletes that did get booed. The only ones I heard getting booed were the Italians. I've been watching the Olympics quite a bit, and really I haven't seen any sort of animosity towards the athletes. Doesn't matter what country they were coming from. Israel, Australia, South Africa, the Congo, or Jamaica, Israel, or the United States of America. Genuinely, they're all being encouraged and cheered. And that's the spirit of the Olympics, Gary. And it's just unfortunate. A, it costs so much. B, that the message of the Olympics is being lost with every consecutive Olympic that occurs, and extremely expensive Olympics, as you mentioned on the outset.
Well, now that you mentioned the message, what is the message of the Olympics now?
What is, or what should it be?
What is right now? Never mind what it should be. What is the message of the Olympics right now?
I'm an optimist, so I would think the message from the Olympics is that we are here to compete as athletes of the world, representing the world as best as we possibly could through participation in sports and respect for you and respect for your competition. Isn't that pretty much what we'd like to see in the world as optimists? Countries competing with each other in fair play, and equally respect them and their views, and let's all be happy and kumbaya. But in the world, that's not going to happen. It never has. In the Olympics, it's just unfortunate that it doesn't happen. And
yeah.
And then just as we're heading towards the closing of the show, there's a running joke that God created people. God created Canada, and Canada are going to be very peaceful people. And then he realized, wait until I drop the puck. Something to that effect, right? So the Canadians the Canadians played their first Olympic game on Thursday, so that should be interesting. Our ladies team lost to the United States 5-0, so they got their game handed to them. But there's always the playoffs, and I guess look, when the competition gets really rough and tough, and usually doesn't get any rougher and tougher than in ice hockey, we're certainly not going to see what we saw in the Four Nations tournament, where in the first 9 seconds, Canada in the preliminary round between Canada and the U.S. they fought 3 times in 9 minutes. You know what? That will not happen in the Olympics. There are consequences for actions in the Olympics, and the rules of the Olympics are very strict about sportsmanship and camaraderie and respect. That is going to be upheld during the tournament, because there is no turning back. It'll cost your country a potential run at the medal. So it'll be a very interesting ice hockey tournament, both for the women and especially for the men to see how it pans out. And at the end of the day, I'd like to continue seeing the camaraderie amongst the athletes. And I don't know if you saw, Gary. I think you did. In terms of protest, I mean, we have the group protest by activists and whatnot on the outside of the Olympic venues. In a very subtle way, there's always been some form of protest at every Olympics since day one that can't go unnoticed. In my lifetime, and the one that I continuously bring up to mind from a memory perspective is one of the two Olympic events, the 1936 Berlin events. Wasn't a form of protest, but the fact that Jesse Owens won so many gold medals and under difficult circumstances in front of Mein Führer Adolf Hitler in his own stadium, when all of his propaganda was basically saying the Aryan white race is supreme, and black people and people of color were basically imbeciles and insignificant. Just by him winning was a constant formal protest out in Nazi Germany. The second one that comes to mind, Gary, is in Mexico City, 1968, Black Power. I'm just going to read the names here. In the '68 Summer Olympics, two sprinters, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, raised their black gloves, if you remember that, in their fists during the medal ceremonies in the 200-meter race. And they were basically protesting against racial injustice in the United States. And I'm sure a lot of people will recognize or reflect back on that particular scene when they're standing on the podium with their fists raised. So that was considered a significant form of protest. And basically the rest of the world looking at the United States and saying, wow, racism really does still exist there, which was not a good good shine for the United States. And then recently in these Olympics, the Ukrainian skeleton racer, that's the one where you get on the toboggan and you go downhill like a psychopath without any brakes. Vladislav Harashchevich, I hope I got his name right, wasn't a form of protest. It was more a form of honor. On his helmet, he actually had pictures embossed of his friends and the athletes of the Ukrainian Olympic team that died in the Ukrainian conflict with Russia as a tribute to them.
Yeah.
And the International Olympic Committee were saying, oh, that's a no. And he's basically saying, it's not a political statement. I am honoring my friends who have died in the war. And I don't think he was sanctioned or punished or anything like that. I'd have to follow up on my news. And then the next day, another skeleton racer. Her name was she's a loser, Olena Smaha. What she did is on her gloves that have spikes where she can actually get herself moving. She actually had written on there, "Remembrance is not a violation." So she's not really protesting politically, but she's making a statement. So there are subtle ways of getting your message across and point across without insulting anyone. And I think some of the athletes are doing it. But here's the best one, Gary. My last one, okay? Gus Kenworthy. He's competing for Great Britain. He posted a graphic anti-ice message, basically written in snow with his urine.
Oh, right. I heard something about that.
Yeah. Now,
yeah.
If that isn't ballsy, I don't know what is. Yeah, that's exactly what he did. And U.S. lawmakers are all, pissed off at him, take his uniform off and whatever else. The guy's making a protest. And here are the Olympic rules. You cannot wear anything on your uniform or have any signs with you during competition or directly in the venue while you're competing. You are not allowed. Okay. Now, all of this happened outside of Olympic venues, right? So this gentleman who decided to relieve himself in fashion, he did it outside of any venue and he wasn't competing. So I don't think there are going to be any sanctions directly applied to him by the Olympic Committee. But there are ways for athletes to get around this. And you know what? I think their messages are very profound and they're very clear that they're just not going to take what's going on in the world sitting down, and hats off to them. I am really proud when somebody stands up for their rights and for justifiable cause
And I
in a
totally
peaceful
understand.
in a peaceful manner.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, Eddie. But we will tend to. I have to disagree to a degree.
Okay.
Actually, and I'll tell you why. You know, the same as the protests outside, and they shouldn't be allowed anywhere near the Olympic venues, at all, just period. But the athletes are there to compete, and not, to me, not make any kind of a political statement. You should be concentrating strictly on what you're doing as far as your competition is concerned. After it's over, and especially if you've won a gold medal or a couple of gold medals, where the spotlight will be on you both internationally and then nationally and locally when you finally do get home, use the time then to make your statement from a political standpoint or from a rights standpoint. But while you're in the venue, compete. Focus on the competition and nothing else. Compete. And then go outside after the fact. Or go out and take on the people who are kept outside because of their demonstrations.
Right.
But you know, it's what's going to happen is it may be a bit of a novelty to, you know, for a lot of people now to tune in, watch 10 or 15 seconds of a protest going, you know, through the streets, or a competition, or an athlete on TikTok, you know, the short making TikTok of whatever statement they made after winning their medal. But, you know, that's your 8 to 15 seconds of fame, and it's gone.
Right.
And by the time they've scrolled to the next TikTok, you're out of their mind. So you've accomplished nothing. Do it after the fact. But concentrate on, because eventually people will get tired. Like, I don't watch an award show now. You could not pay me enough money to watch an award show. Because the thank you speeches keep getting longer. They thank everybody and anyone who's ever even touched them. Give it up. And secondly, they're all now making political statements.
Yeah.
And that started even before the current occupant of the Oval Office. You're there because you're being presented for something, for your accomplishments in your entertainment field. And even that, like, you've got small p politics mixed up in the Academy Awards and in the lobbying and everything that goes on behind the scenes. So,
where about that? The whole question is where does it stop, and when is it going to stop?
Yeah.
It's
so
where I think any place is open game nowadays, and when, not going to stop.
Well, eventually it's going to start costing them viewers. And when that starts happening, when they see the audience shrinking, then there'll be the whining and the moaning and going on and, you know, gnashing of teeth and what have you. But by then it'll be too late, because there are way too many other options now. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. What can I say? So with that, Eddie, you know, like, really, we've had 3 very different discussions tonight. It's amazing when you think about it. 3 very different discussions. And really no hard, fast answers, resolutions to any of the issues that have come out of those 3 discussions. But hopefully people start thinking, start asking questions, and start making people more accountable for various actions and policies and what have you. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And once again, I just want to just take a moment and just send out an emotional "we're with you" to the people of Tumbler Ridge. It's just amazing. It's just I just can't get my head around what they have suffered already and what they're going to be suffering in the hours, days, weeks, months ahead.
Yeah.
What a shame.
And I share your sentiments, Gary, as well. Victims and their families in Tumbler's Ridge, where we do feel for you, and thoughts and prayers to you as well. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder to like, share, subscribe on YouTube, and like on Facebook. I'm Eddie Tekalik. Good night, everyone.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. Night Talk Canada returns in 7 days. Good night.